Governor John Bel Edwards restored the $100 million in budget cuts to the Louisiana Department of Health, avoiding serious potential cuts in health services for citizens. The Louisiana legislature in the final minutes of the fiscal session approved the cuts, many lawmakers claiming they had no idea what the cuts were all about. The budgetary maneuver avoids more than a $700 million potential loss of funds to the health department. But the bigger issue is, how did this happen in the first place? Here's more.
Governor John Bel Edwards signed House Bill number 1 of the 2023 session while also using his line item veto authority on 5 items, including one that restores the $100 million reduction in funding to the Louisiana Department of Health to protect against, as he says, quote, devastating programmatic cuts. The governor's veto follows a letter from the Senate Health and Welfare Committee asking the governor to restore the cuts, as many legislators questioned the wisdom of reducing health department funding in a year where the state had a $2.5 billion surplus.
We're basically asking the governor to use his veto pen to correct the mistake that should have been corrected on the Senate floor.
State Senator Frank Mills serves as the chairman of the Senate Health and Welfare Committee, charged with examining how the proposed cuts could impact public health services.
But that type of cut with a budget surplus that would equate to almost $800 million of cuts to health care, it should have just been done in a more thoughtful situation where all 144 legislators had a point to debate it.
Many lawmakers say they were caught off guard by the health department cuts as they raced against the clock to pass the state budget before the 6 p.m. mandated adjournment of the 2023 fiscal session. The unexpected news reached the state health department secretary minutes before the session ended.
I had around 5:30 told folks we could kind of stand down. It's looking like after we testified that we're looking good. So on my way home, I got a call saying, hey, we've been cut $100 million in state general fund. I thought it was a joke, to be honest with you.
I think everybody just really was caught off guard, and it was just something we didn't foresee and was not prepared for. And as we've had time to digest it more, we recognize that this is not moving our state in the right direction.
Lawmakers were left with sticker shock over the grand total of funding cuts when factoring in the loss of federal match dollars.
You're looking overall at around a $400 to a $700 million total impact, depending upon where the reductions come from.
So let's back up to how lawmakers and the health department ended up in this conundrum in the first place. At the end of the fiscal session, lawmakers were debating whether to raise the spending cap, making way for the appropriation of budget surplus dollars. The delay on approving a higher spending cap created a bottleneck in the bill debate.
I went to the floor when it came over and I asked the members, I said, we have the opportunity, we're running out of time. Let's move this resolution to committee to discuss whether or not we want to raise the cap. Is it a good thing? And look, bringing it to committee early would give us more time on the back end to say, okay, whether we did it or not, now we have time to look at the actual bills and to see what's in them and to be able to do those things.
So fast forward to the Senate Health and Welfare Committee, with Secretary Russo presenting lawmakers with a list of potential cuts.
We basically talked that the cuts would be devastating not only to the recipients of care in Louisiana, but the network of care. If we're not paying our providers the adequate amount of money to be paid to take care of our Medicaid patients and our indigent patients, we will blow up the provider base.
The crystallizing moment in this meeting was the realization that the health care cuts equated to cost shifting, a zero-sum game with a domino effect. Some lawmakers reacted by writing a letter to the governor, requesting him to restore the $100 million in state funds to the health department. The fallout from the frenzied budget vote has some asking, is there a lesson to be learned from what went down in the final moments of the legislative session?
Does PAR feel that there might have been a better way to handle things in the end to avoid the 11th hour voting chaos?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they should have had this, in a perfect world, they would have this a day or two in ahead, and then people can see what the amendments are. But even without that, they should have had at least more communication with the leaders and with the public and saying, hey, look, this is a summary document of everything that's happening that would be easily available for everyone.
Well, I think that there's going to be, from this situation, I think the legislature is going to be looking at more mandated timelines.
So we've talked about rulemaking changes to ensure that in the future that there are so many hours that the budget has to be received, it has to lie over, that it has to be re-engrossed.
A re-engrossed bill has the amendments added in for lawmakers to read. Now, one of the challenges in this past fiscal session was a lack of time to read all of the amendments.
Most colleagues out there agreed that that budget that we passed was a sound, good, conservative budget, and it did everything that our state needed us to do at this time.
House Speaker Shakespeare points out the positive, that lawmakers passed a bill putting $2.5 billion in the state's savings account.
That has never happened in the history, 211 years of our existence. That has never happened before. You look at the debt payment that we made, $618 million in debt payment.
As the governor continues to wield his veto pen, the mix of nixed bills could call legislators back to the state capitol for a special session.
So what is the likelihood, in your opinion, of ending up in a special session?
I believe that out of 9 out of 10, 99%. Because I don't think that this is the only issue that we'll be addressing.
A veto override session is automatically scheduled once the governor finishes reviewing and rejecting legislation, unless a majority of the House or Senate votes not to have the session.